I was very close to Dr. Williams. I mean, I saw him almost every day, and I didn't know he was as ill as he turned out to be. So that a few months before he died, I observed a deterioration in his health and so on. But I really didn't expect him to die as suddenly as he died. And I was devastated by his death, because he was a great leader. I learned a lot from him. He inspired me a lot. He cared a lot for this country. And his vision for Trinidad and Tobago was a very, very, very good one. So I felt that we had lost the big vacuum in the country at the time. And I was devastated by it.
Errol Edward Mahabir was born on February 25, 1931 in San Fernando and was educated in Port of Spain, first at Tranquility Boys School and then climbing the academic ladder to the prestigious Queen's Royal College. He taught for 1 year after leaving school before joining Texaco Oil Company in 1951 as assistant planning superintendent. His experience at Texaco was to serve him well when he entered the political arena, as he gained valuable insight into the energy sector, labor relations, and effective use of the country's energy resources. The 1950s were heady days in Trinidad and Tobago. Nationalism and a strong sense of patriotism filled the atmosphere, as the yoke of colonialism weighed heavily in the hearts and minds of our people. It is out of this milieu that Errol Edward Mahabir answered the call to national service.
Well, in the late 50s, we were still a colonial country under the rule of Great Britain, and the party system was not yet in place. There was no political party. There were no political parties at the time, and in the late 50s, that's when Dr. Williams started his lectures throughout the country. And that's what got me interested in politics. I used to go to listen to his lectures, and especially when they came to San Fernando in the South. I followed Dr. Williams. My wife and I used to go to listen to the meetings and so on. And Muriel Donovan and I were at Point de Pierre at the same time. And she encouraged me to become a member of the party, which I did in August 1956. And I showed some interest in the activity of the party, but not very much. I was just an ordinary backbencher in that sense of politics. But then there was a by-election in the San Fernando Borough Council, and a few people approached me to be the candidate for that particular by-election. And before we went any further with it, the by-election was called off. And then in 1959, a group of people came and they asked me to serve as a member of the San Fernando Borough Council. It wasn't that I had set out to enter politics, but then people encouraged me and so on. And in 1959, I contested for the San Fernando Borough Council in November 1959.
While his early political life as mayor of San Fernando kept him busy, Mahabir's commitment to country evoked avarice for hard work.
But working in San Fernando Borough Council was interesting, much more interesting than I think it is today, in that we did work. We cleaned drains, we did the roads within the city. We looked after public health in a serious way. I remember as a young councillor, every weekend I was deputy mayor and mayor, I would go on a tour of the city, or the town as it was in those days, the borough of San Fernando, and we would look at the works that are going on and so on. I don't think that there's this intense activity at the level of the council today as it was in our time.
He also served at that time as Vice Chairman of the National Housing Authority, a board member of the Water and Sewerage Authority, Chairman of the Carnegie Board, Second Vice Chairman of the People's National Movement, President of the San Fernando Tennis Club, and Chairman of the San Fernando Carnival Development Committee. From the San Fernando Corporation, Mahabir went on to the national political stage, entering Parliament in 1966 as the Member of Parliament for San Fernando West. Over the years, he made a sterling contribution to national life, serving in many ministerial capacities. He first served as Minister of Public Utilities in 1967. In 1969, he was given the portfolio of Minister of Labour and Social Security. He also held the portfolios of Minister of Industry and Commerce, Minister in the Ministry of Finance, Minister of Petroleum and Mines, and Minister of External Affairs.
I was a member of the government from 66 to 86. And we went through times of difficulty and times of plenty. More particularly following the Yom Kippur War in 1973, when the price of oil rose astronomically for us in those days. We had a lot of funds at our disposal. And in 1986, after I left politics, I spent some time writing a paper, Trinidad and Tobago, 1970 to 1985, Oil Wealth Management in a Developing Country, in which I took an honest look at how we as a government performed during those 15 years. And what I find is that the mistakes we made in those days are being repeated, perhaps with greater intensity. And what makes it a little more difficult is that the amount of money that the government has today is substantially greater than what we had in our time. And if I were to, I'm not sitting in the cabinet, so I do not know some of the problems they encounter and some of the factors that impel them in a particular direction or inform their decisions. But I would say that from observing at present and taking into account the experience I had in those 20 years, I would think that the government is not putting the emphasis in the right places at the present time. I would like to see more emphasis placed on the development of the infrastructure in the country. And I am happy to see that funds are being set aside in the Heritage Fund for later on, because I'm quite sure they'll be needed later on. We went through that in 1980-81 when oil price dropped suddenly, and we found that although we had over 50 funds, which we had put funds for development of the country, those funds had to be all closed down and used for the routine, everyday expenses in the country.
The portfolios he held reflected the great confidence then Prime Minister Dr. Eric Williams had in Mahabir's ability. Mahabir's peers speak highly of his strong work ethic while in government.
What stands out is his passion for work and his dedication and his efficiency. I think that his period of service was one where there was, I would say, a close linkage between his work as government and his work in the party. When I arrived in cabinet and parliament in 1971, he was already the deputy political leader, one of the deputy political leaders. I think precisely was deputy political leader, party and election affairs. But he had a preview before coming into parliament and cabinet in 1966, 5 years before me. He had 6 years as a mayor and deputy mayor of San Fernando. So he brought with him a rich experience in public service at a local government level and at national level. He was truly a very efficient and very dedicated minister. One of the things which you would have noticed during the whole period that we were together, because I was there for 15 years from 71 to 86, and he was there for 20 years from 66 to 86. But during the period that I knew him working together, he held some key ministries. These ministries, shall I call them the productive ministries, industry and commerce, energy and energy-based industries, in the Ministry of Labor and Cooperatives, and Ministry of Finance, which had to do with planning and development and providing the finance. Particularly the question of the fiscal policies with respect to the energy industries, and so he had a lot of experience in these productive ministries, particularly in the Ministry of Public Utilities and the Ministry of Labor. So he had a very broad opportunity to serve in these very key ministries, and he was very, very hardworking, very efficient. Dr. Williams had a lot of confidence in him, and as such he was, I would say, a pivot in the ministerial setup. He was chairman of one of the cabinet committees, Finance and Economics or General Purposes Committee, and so he had a lot of influence. I would say Errol was always willing to assist anyone who came to him. As I was a junior minister to him, and I think he behaved that way with all ministers. He would help listen to what they have to say and give advice and assistance and so on, because he had a lot of experience, and he worked, and he showed a very good example, because he worked very hard and very, very effective, very efficient. Because of that, I think he was trusted and relied upon very greatly by Dr. Williams, who I think Dr. Williams wrote him letters almost every day, giving him instructions on the things that he wanted him to do, so that he was a key figure, a very key figure.
Mahabir's deep and passionate commitment to his country did impact the time he was able to spend with his beloved wife and children, whose support was critical to his success then and throughout his political career.
I mean, he made a lot of sacrifices as we were growing up. I mean, he spent a lot of time. We were living in San Fernando, and he was driving to Port of Spain and back every day. So he left early, got home late. Many days we wouldn't see him at all. And I think that affected him a lot. We see it now in the way he treats his grandchildren. He calls them every day, no matter where he is. And I think he's trying to relive some of what he missed in those days when we were growing up. It was a tremendous sacrifice for him, for us too, but more so for him. Because, I mean, we still had my mother, my brother, my sister, and he was kind of sometimes left out of that whole package. And I know it affected him a lot. He's always been very much a family man and very strong in keeping the family unit together. I mean, even now, I mean, I live in Maraval now, but we go to San Fernando every Sunday as a family to make sure that we have that family unit together. So it's very, very important for him. A lot of members of his family, some of us, his children included, kind of nudged him to get out at times, but I think he felt such a strong commitment to what he was doing and to the country that he continued to stay into it. I remember he left in, I think it was 1981, he left home going to the convention saying that he's not going back up for elections. That's the last thing he told my mother when he was leaving, and then he called her from the convention while his brother was with him, and he says, well, Mom, you know, when I got here, the resounding reception I received, I can't turn my back on the people. I'm going back. So I mean, it was that commitment he couldn't escape. And then even now, you see it when he looks at what's going on in the country. You see that sense of commitment, that real love for his country, and that sense of wanting to serve. That was a very strong pull, and they defined who he was. My dad came from a very large family. I mean, brothers and sisters, including half brothers and half sisters, was more than 20. And so he grew up with a very large family. He took charge of the family at a fairly early age because his father died at a young age, and he sort of became the patriarch. Helped put a lot of his brothers through university and that sort of thing. And then you compare that to our family, which he has three children, 2 boys, 1 girl. So he's a much smaller environment, but he sort of adopted the entire all his nieces and nephews were all part of one huge family, and he's grown up knowing about family and loving family and feeling a commitment to family. So it's part of who he is. My father was in politics since I was born, so I knew very little else until he demitted office in 1986. And at times you feel selfishly that, I want my father for myself, and why is he giving so much of himself to being in the country? We'd go on vacations and he couldn't come, or that kind of thing. And you do feel that, and you do feel that why is he not giving us more of himself? And in the long run, you as you mature, you realize what he is all about and why he did it. And you kind of you give up this sort of selfish feelings that you may have had as growing up. We saw the amount of work that he did. I mean, I remember him receiving cabinet papers brought by the police at night and having to read them in the car as he drove to Port of Spain, and wondering how could he do that. And we saw that kind of sacrifice. But what many people don't know about him is the very warm, loving, generous person that he is to his family and to anybody who needs help. I mean, we used to have underneath our house as we were growing up on a Saturday, he would see a couple hundred people as an extension of what he would do in his constituency office on, I think it was a Tuesday night. I can't remember exactly which night it was, but that was extended into Saturdays and sometimes Sundays. And that defined what he wanted to be. He came from very humble upbringings. I mean, he grew up in a rum shop, and his father owned and ran a rum shop, and that's where he first, I suppose, came into contact with dealing with people and meeting people and liking to deal with people. And he grew out of that and contributed his service that he felt, and I think still feels, that he wanted to give to the country.
In 1984, Mahabir celebrated his 25th anniversary in public life at the St. Paul's Anglican Church in San Fernando, and in 1986 he celebrated 25 years as the People's National Movement MP for San Fernando West. This was also the year in which he retired from active politics. He continued to contribute to Trinidad and Tobago in the business and energy sectors, forming his San Fernando-based company Eminent International Limited, and serving on the boards of BWIA and West Indies Stockbrokers, and as chairman of Damas Caribbean Limited. He also served as chairman of NBN and ICN from 1999 to 2001. Over the years, many accolades have been bestowed upon Errol Edward Mahabir, recognizing the sterling contributions he has made to the national development of Trinidad and Tobago. As early as 1965, he received an award from the Trinidad Junior Chamber of Commerce. In 1966, he was named Man of the Year. Among those bestowing accolades is Canon Nolly Clark.
I knew him as he engaged in political and social life in his constituency, and I think San Fernando as a whole. And I thought of Errol as a very down-to-earth, very practical personality. His status as minister, he held so many ministries that I even forgot how many, that his status did not affect Errol. Errol remained as the down-to-earth person that he was, a man of great political experience and acumen. And I think as he was in the City Council of San Fernando, then Borough Council, this gave him a lot of, gave him the experience and the ability to relate to grassroots problems. He used to have an office. And his office, everyone, I think, whether you belong to the PNM or wherever, he was there for people. He was a San Fernandian, a southerner. And he was very, 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 very down to earth, a grassroots person. And I think when he celebrated, I think 25 years as a politician, I preached for it. And I said that I meant that. I said there was a passion, there was a dedication for him that he expressed in his life and his ministry and so on. And he had a good partner in Errol Mahabir, who was always there for things. I don't want to emphasize his Anglicanism because that he was indeed a great help to the Anglican Church and all churches. I shouldn't think all churches, because people who felt that they could go to Errol with everything. In 1990, you may remember that I was asked by the police service, Commissioner Kenny Mohammed, and to go into the Parliament. And tried my best in whatever way I could have dealt with the matter. I was not a trained negotiator or anything. But whatever I had the goodwill, and I felt that I needed to help when I was called. And I was getting a lot of flack from politicians. And I remember Errol was not in the country. And Errol called me from, is it Singapore? No, but he called me from overseas, maybe Singapore. And he told me, hold your head up. You did a good thing. In other words, Errol was there for me. Errol was there for me.
Errol Edward Mahabir. His contribution to the political landscape and public life can still be felt in Trinidad and Tobago. His was a sterling contribution to a newly independent nation that was just finding its way in the regional and international arena. Today, Mahabir, still involved in the business sector, offers this advice to those in public life and the business sector.
First of all, if you must really believe that you want to make a contribution and enter politics, because it's a thankless job, as I learned. But it is a rewarding job in the sense that you are helping your fellow man and you are helping the development of the country. And give it your best shot, work hard, work honestly, because it's very easy to cast aspersions on politicians. So you have to understand that. A young man wants to enter business, the hard work, dedication, commitment to whatever you're doing.